The 2025 regular season is nearing the end. Based on preseason odds, all 32 teams fell into one of three groups. Number 1, they did about as expected. Number 2, they disappointed, finishing way below where we thought. Or number 3, they surprised us, exceeding expectations. In today's video, we will go over the teams in 2025 that surprised us. And first, I'm going to go over 2 honorable mentions that I'll shout out but not go into depth. And those 2 teams are the Panthers and the Colts. The Panthers have had their best season since 2017, back when they still had Ron Rivera and Cam Newton. There's a good chance they win the division after defeating the Bucs in Week 16, which is a huge accomplishment considering how bad this franchise has been over the previous 7 seasons. For the Colts, they were perhaps the biggest surprise in the NFL through 10 games, boasting an 8-2 record. They were on pace to lock in the number 1 seed, but it all fell apart. They lost their next 3 games and saw their season crumble before their eyes when versus the Jags, Daniel Jones suffered a season-ending injury. This led the Colts to making the most surprising decision of the 2025 NFL season. 44-year-old Philip Rivers suited up after 5 years with hardly any prep, and he started against one of the best defenses in the NFL on short notice. And he nearly led the Colts to victory. This was more of a fun story than anything, as the Colts are pretty much eliminated from the playoffs at this point. Alright, with the 2 honorable mentions out of the way, let's dive into this video. First off, we have the Chicago Bears. With the hiring of Ben Johnson as their new head coach, expectations were that the Bears would improve, but that wasn't saying much considering how 2024 ended. They finished 5-12 in 2024 in a season that saw rookie Caleb Williams get sacked more than any other quarterback in the NFL. In a seemingly stacked division entering 2025, odds were that the Bears would finish once again last in the NFC North. At first, things got off to a rough start when the Bears lost their opening 2 games of the season, their second of which they were blown out 52-21 by the Lions. While the chemistry between Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams has had its growing pains, where this team found its stride was in the running game.
Cutback, pops into the end zone, touchdown Chicago.
After rattling off a handful of victories, DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai had a coming out party versus the Saints in Week 7, combining for over 200 yards. 2 weeks later, the rookie breakout star Monangai would go off for 176 yards on 26 carries versus the Bengals. This was a special day for Caleb Williams as well, as he put up 4 total touchdowns, including catching one, and he posted a 114 QB rating in an overall well-balanced offensive game for Chicago. By that point, the Bears were 5-3, but still weren't viewed in high regard from a league-wide perspective.
It's backyard football. I don't think this is going to work.
They had done well against some of the bottom dwellers, but they had the blowout loss versus Detroit, and they lost by 14 to a Tyler Huntley-led Baltimore squad, and those losses loomed large. However, despite this, the Bears kept on winning. The win over Cincinnati was the first of 5 straight victories, which included winning on the road versus Minnesota, beating Pittsburgh, and handling Philly in Philly. After dominating the Browns and pulling off an overtime thriller versus the Packers, the Bears currently have a positive point differential.
Going for it all! It is caught! Bears win it!
At the time of this video, there is still playoff seeding to be decided, but regardless, the Bears are in, and they have their most wins in a season since 2018. That is a huge accomplishment. Ben Johnson has proven to be a great hire to this point, as his run game has dominated just like it did in Detroit. I think it's also worth crediting their running back coach Eric Bieniemy, the guy who was the offensive coordinator in Kansas City from 2018 to 2022. Next up, we gotta show some love to most of the NFC West, starting with the LA Rams. Now, the Rams were expected to be good in 2025. After all, they were a play away from reaching the NFC Championship the previous season. But even with odds makers predicting them as a playoff team once again, the Rams this season have been much better than anticipated. At first, there were concerns about Stafford and his back. The 37-year-old sat out of training camp due to that injury. And whenever you got an old guy with an old back, it usually doesn't bode well. But despite the concerns, Stafford hasn't missed a regular season game to this point and has been having the best year of his career. With Stafford, they have been the #1 passing offense in the league, throwing the most amount of touchdowns and least amount of interceptions. Stafford had an 8-game stretch where he threw 25 touchdowns and 0 picks. Watching their offensive operation is as beautiful as it gets. From the Stafford to Puka connection, to Stafford throwing the ball to Adams in the red zone, these guys are completely dialed in. Well, kind of. This whole Puka Nacua storyline has been quite a distraction recently. From live streaming in the locker room, to trying to bring streamers inside the Rams facility, to criticizing officials, this has clearly been an issue with this guy, and we'll see what kind of effect this has on the rest of the season. But hey, at least he's absolutely dominant on the field in the meantime. What's amazing about this team is that not only are they one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL, but their defense has been top-notch, ranking near the top statistically. In fact, there's only one team in the entire NFL with a higher point differential through 13 games, and we'll talk about them next. Up next, the Seattle Seahawks. When the Seahawks decided to move on from Geno Smith and sign Sam Darnold, the typical take was that this wasn't seen as an upgrade. If anything, it was a slight downgrade. Geno had been mostly solid in his 3 years starting in Seattle, and although Sam had had great success in Minnesota, those last 2 games with them were awful. Plus, going from the weapons he had in Minnesota to what he was expected to have in Seattle without DK Metcalf, it was supposed to hurt his play. Seattle was expected to be good defensively and probably mediocre offensively. After finishing 2024 10-7, a similar or slightly worse season was expected, as the preseason odds had them winning around 8 to 9 games. But after 5 weeks into the 2025 season, it was clear that this Seattle team was different.
And looking inside the court, Smith and Chipper with the crowd.
They had put up over 30 points in 3 of those 5 games, and the connection between Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba had proven to be one of the best in the NFL.
Sam, big head, hair, shoulders, butt.
What?
And crazy enough, we hadn't even seen the best of that duo to that point. Through the first 11 games, Smith and Jigba had put up over 100 yards 8 times, and Sam Darnold led the NFL in yards per attempt while also being the highest rated PFF NFL QB. What's wild is that Seattle is a run-first team. They've had one of the highest number of rush attempts in the NFL, while ranking nearly dead last in pass attempts. And so far, I haven't even mentioned how good their defense has been. Defensively, Seattle is about as tough as they come. From shutting out Minnesota to only giving up 9 points to Atlanta, Seattle is ranked highly in most respective defensive categories. They're top 5 in takeaways, yards allowed, opponent third down percentage, the list goes on. And that recent Thursday night matchup versus the Rams was a huge moment for this team. Despite trailing by 16 in the fourth quarter, Seattle came all the way back to win the game with some miraculous moments, including perhaps the craziest 2-point conversion of all time. As of the time of publishing this video, the Seahawks are positioned to take the number 1 seed. And for the last NFC West team in this video, we have the San Francisco 49ers. Like the Rams, the 49ers were fully expected to be in the playoff conversation. However, this team had no business being as good as they've been, considering the outrageous amount of injuries that they've dealt with. For starters, their tight end George Kittle was out after week 1 for 5 weeks, and their quarterback has missed most of the season. And then you look at their defense in week 3, one of the best defensive ends in the NFL, Nick Bosa, tore his ACL. And then their defensive captain, Fred Warner, broke his ankle in week 6. This meant that 4 of their top 5 players have missed huge chunks of this season. Beyond those major injuries, the Niners were considered the 3rd most injured team in the league by mid-November. Yet, despite this, they rallied around the guys that they did have out there, and they had been winning games on a regular basis. Mac Jones filled in for Purdy and had looked better than he did at any point of his career. McCaffrey has put together a season for the ages, and this defense is somehow a top 10 unit despite missing its best 2 players. And I can't fail to mention that they also lost Greenlaw, Charvarius Ward, and Hufanga to free agency this last offseason. Those were 3 key pieces in a previously dominant defense. The fact that this team not only didn't crumble, but has been one of the better teams in the league is truly a testament to their resilience and incredible coaching on both sides of the ball. Regardless of how they do in the playoffs, this is truly a special season for them, considering what they've had to endure. The NFC West is truly an absolute gauntlet of the NFL's best. Well, minus Arizona. Next up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville did a complete reset after the disaster that was the 2024 season. They finished 4-13 and proceeded to fire just about everybody. To begin this rebuild, they hired James Gladstone as their new GM, and also former Bucs OC Liam Cohen became their next head coach. Even after making some splashes in the offseason, highlighted by trading up and drafting Travis Hunter second overall, Jacksonville was still only expected to win 7 to 8 games in 2025. However, there was some life to this new squad. Through 5 weeks, they had been one of the more interesting stories in the NFL. They had gone 4-1 in that span, which included defeating the Texans, the 49ers on the road, and defeating the Chiefs on Monday night.
Now Lawrence goes down, breaks a tackle, touchdown Jacksonville!
Lawrence falling down, getting up, and scoring on that play to win the game was pure cinema. They had trailed by 14 in that game and had come all the way back to win. Over the course of the season, especially in that game versus the Chiefs, Jacksonville was beginning to prove that they were a well-rounded team. The laughingstock that they were in 2024 was far in the rearview mirror, and now they had their sights on continuing their success and returning to the playoffs. Now, they had a few bumps in the road, dropping 3 of their next 4, but after a dominant victory over the Chargers, they found their stride once again. Sitting at 5-4, the turning point in Jacksonville's season came in a game versus the Chargers. With the Chargers favored, the Jags totally dominated that game on both sides of the ball, winning in blowout fashion. This was the first victory in a big-time win streak that took Jacksonville from middle of the pack to one of the NFL's best, reaching double-digit wins for the first time since 2017. Also, Trevor Lawrence has looked much better near the end of this season. You can point to the fact that he played mostly weak teams when he performed well, but whenever you put up nearly 400 total yards and 6 total touchdowns, it's praiseworthy. And it wasn't a fluke because we saw this team dominate against the Broncos in Denver. Coincidentally, the next team up on the list is the Denver Broncos. Coming off that great first season with Bo Nix in 2024, Denver was expected to be good again in 2025, finishing somewhere in that 9-10 win range. However, they've been more dominant than most saw coming. What's crazy is they've actually had a worse point differential than they did last season, but they've been extremely impressive when it matters most, the fourth quarter. From their comeback victory in Philly to their multiple game-winning kicks as time expired, Denver has just been clutch. Bo Nix leads the league in fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives this season. I saw this crazy stat about how Denver is the only team with a winning record that has trailed in at least 12 games this season. Overall, Denver as a team has been impressive, mostly on the defensive side of the ball. On that side, they've ranked first or near first in critical categories like yards per play, points allowed, opponent third down percentage, red zone percentage. Just overall, this defense stifles opponents. And while their offense has been average by league standards, like I said, they make plays when it matters most, against everybody. Even with the recent disappointing loss to Jacksonville, Denver still has an amazing record and has a good chance of being the number 1 seed in the AFC. And finally, last but not least, the New England Patriots. Now, this has to be the biggest surprise in the NFL. Just last year, we were talking about how the Patriots were one of the least talented teams in the NFL. Drake May had done decent in moments as a rookie, but this team had no juice. They finished 4-13 with one of the worst offenses in the league, and were outscored by more than a touchdown per game on average. But clearly after firing Gerard Mayo and bringing in Mike Vrabel, this culture has completely shifted. The Patriots were expected to improve under Vrabel, with oddsmakers predicting 8 to 9 wins. But the dramatic turnaround on both sides of the ball blew those expectations out of the water. Despite a 1-2 start, the Patriots began to rattle off victory after victory, going on a massive win streak that helped them reach double-digit victories before Thanksgiving. Drake May went from promising rookie to MVP candidate. At least through 13 games, he's led the league in completion percentage and adjusted yards per attempt. It's pretty awesome because outside of adding a 32-year-old Stephon Diggs, it's not like their offensive personnel changed all that much. Meanwhile, this defense has completely flipped around from what they were the previous season. Vrabel's impact mirrors that of which he pulled off in Tennessee. After the victory versus Baltimore, the Patriots have achieved 12 wins for the first time in the history of their franchise without Tom Brady. pretty amazing considering that they had a losing record the previous 3 seasons and they started this year 1-2. Drake May has come through in clutch moments, which leads me to believe that this team has a legit shot of making a Super Bowl run.
In the lineup, May taking a deep shot, downfield, towards Williams, he brought it in, that's a touchdown!